What's up guys, welcome to Blake's Garage. So today we're going to be doing an upgrade on the Bird E30. My 1988 BMW E30. This is my race car build. It's coming along very well. Basically done, you know, cage, seat, harnesses, all the safety stuff on the car. All the rear is done. Have the CaTuned competition spec rear coilovers in the car now. Also have to put in the front coilovers, so it's going to be a 10K spring up front, 12K in the rear with a true coilover in the rear. And then I have all the bushings that are done, Garagistic, secondary diff mount, all sorts of goodies. But I have kind of neglected the front end of the car. Really haven't done any of the bushings in the front besides coilovers and sway bars and that sort of thing. So today we are going to be changing up how the steering is going to work on this. So if you guys have an E30, you may know that the steering wheel, lock to lock, from fully left to fully right, takes about 4 turns to get all the way around. So we'll start from here. So this is 1, 2, 3, I don't know, I would say like 3.8 turns or something, lock to lock. So as you can see, that is a lot of turns to get lock to lock. So if you're getting sideways, stuff like that, you may want a quicker rack because you're really gonna have to throw that wheel around when you're getting loose out there. This right here is a Z3, BMW Z3 rack. This is going to change that lock to lock to 2.7 turns lock to lock. Now, as you'll also notice here too, the ends on here for the tie rods, these are threaded like this externally. On an E30, you will have tie rods that are kind of internally threaded to where it actually like threads into the inside. So if you're doing this change, you're gonna need new end links. I am doing this pretty legit when I do it. So I actually got new lower control arms. These are German made ones. These are good stuff. I picked these up from CaTuned. They're made in Germany. They're good stuff. Those have brand new ball joints on them. Also, I removed the old ball joint. So I'll insert a clip here to press out the old ball joint, which you're just gonna do on a press. Use that. Then you're going to install the new ball joint using a press, same sort of way. From underneath, use something, get it in there, and you're just gonna press it on in. You will need a shop press of sorts, so either go find somebody with a press or go to a local machine shop and they should be able to press these in for you guys. And I'm adding the Magnus Team Racing roll center bump steer adapter for the E30 or E36. This is a really awesome item as well. Essentially what it does is it changes the pickup point for the front knuckle. And I'll show you this more when we jump down below the car. But I also have a Heim joint for the actual tie rod as well, so that is just a straight Heim joint, so there is no play in there whatsoever. And then these are chromoly tie rod ends, so this is some good beefy stuff. And what this actually does, this is your normal pickup point. Pretend your knuckle is right up here, okay? And you'll see this later. This is your normal pickup point basically for your tie rod. This is the hole that's drilled, and this is where your ball joint goes in, right? This is your regular ball joint. Think of that in a knuckle, boom, goes up. What this does, lowers that all down because we've lowered the suspension on the car, which changes the angle of our steering rack, right? Where we might have normally been like this. Now we're kind of moving these more up, so like this. And when you do that, that's gonna change angles on things. So when we hit a bump in the road, it's gonna change the way the steering rack takes that hit because it wasn't designed to do that from the factory. So when you lower your suspension, that's always an issue you run into. Now what this does is it drops it down, basically that amount that you've lowered it. So see, you're dropping that back down from here. Pretend this is the stock knuckle, and now you're dropping it down to here. So essentially, you're correcting the geometry in that power steering rack. Now also, what we're getting here too, well, this is the normal hole for the pickup for the tie rod. Well, it's actually moving it back, right? So we have it moved back about 1 inch. What this also does is gives you more steering angle. So the like fulcrum spot or the leverage spot right here, where this is moving, is actually gonna move quicker, right? Because it has less of a distance to travel from this outer spot. We're basically cutting the inside of the track here, and we are going to get more steering angle out of the car, and it's also going to quicken it up. So this plus this is going to be freaking awesome. That is really going to speed up the steering on this thing. Also, another thing that I picked up are these Garagistic tree eye mounts. I'm gonna put links in the description down below for all of this stuff, but these are really awesome. These are lower control arm mounts, and they have a Delrin insert in here. So this is self-lubricating. This is like a Delrin type style plastic. Super, super hard. These are also an M3 style, so you can see you're not gonna get any sort of deflection, where you'll see when I pull my old ones off, I just have the stock rubber ones that I got on the car. And like I said, when I did this, I decided to you know, change the whole arm, especially because I had to press in ball mount adapters. So you can see also it's basically like a little Heim in there. It has a ball mount and it's really nice. It's gonna be really tight. So everything's gonna be nice and tightened up, which is just awesome. So those basically will go on the car, and you know, later on they're gonna kind of go like this and be bolted down. This is not necessary, but I want to do it. This is a steering shaft flex coupler. I'll be installing this as well. Basically, you have a rubber rag joint in there. This is polyurethane. This is stiffer. This is fresh. This is going to take any play out of the little steering shaft that connects the steering rack to the steering column. So another huge item that you're going to need to make this happen are these Garagistic mounts. So what this does is this is for the steering shaft right here. We're gonna cut out some factory bolts and add these new ones in. That's gonna shorten the little shaft there. And then we also have the bushings here. These bushings are gonna go in between the power steering rack, on top of the power steering rack when it bolts into the subframe. And when we do that, that's gonna take up the gap that basically this rack has. Different than the E30. The E30 must be a little bit taller right here, whereas the E36, E46, and the Z3 racks are a little bit shorter. So this is a Z3 rack. This is 2.7 turns, lock to lock, like I said before. This is the quickest rack that you can put into one of these cars. Some of the other racks have a variance in the rack itself, so the rack can be progressive. On center in the middle, it may not be as quick. Whereas towards the outside it gets quicker, that sort of thing. So very cool. I'm excited to install this on the car. It's gonna be badass. All these parts are super cool. I mean, just look at it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's gonna be a good thing. So first thing I'm gonna do, guys, is I'm gonna go ahead and just jack the car up. Then I'm gonna try to suck out all the power steering fluid that I can out of the reservoir, pop off the wheels, and we'll get disassembling on some stuff. So right now we're gonna look at the factory steering angle. So as you can see, the wheel looks like this. You know, looks pretty good. It's got decent angle. Tires got a decent amount of camber wear on them. I definitely need to get new tires soon, because these are pretty El Cucamondo'd on the inside. But I may have to rotate these with the rear. As you can see, I have the tires pretty worn down. Now, I drew that straight line. This is basically lined up with the car, and I did that because I wanted to put this piece of tape on the ground. We're just gonna mark factory angle right now, so I'll take another piece of tape like this. Okay, so that is the factory angle, right? This is our straight edge right here. If we're pointing straight down the road, going straight with the car, as you guys can see. And now that one is pointing in the full lock of the wheel. So real quick, I'm gonna remove the factory airbox. That way I just have a better view, like a straight shot to all the power steering stuff. So what I did is I went ahead and removed the airbox, a couple 10mm right here. Then I also just took off the reservoir right here as well, just because I want to have a little bit more access down to here, because that is where the steering coupler is, or the steering shaft, as you can see right down there. I'm gonna try to access that from the bottom of the car, but if I could get a little bit more room with my hands in here, I'm gonna do so. I got all of my car off the ground and all that stuff, so I have a skid plate underneath my car for the oil pan. It's a red 46 skid plate. However, I'm gonna go ahead and take this off real quick, so I just gotta bust all these bolts loose. I removed the rack bolts from down below and remove my skid pan. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and break the tie rods loose. This is what I was talking about, guys, on the tie rods. As you can see, they're different. It's not threaded on the outside, it's threaded internally on an E30. However, I think you can actually switch this over, so if you still wanted to run this style, you can. E36 tie rods are actually more beefy. However, I got the new chromoly ones with the with the freaking Heim joints, so those are freaking even sicker. So check those out. This thing is gonna be pretty badass. I'm really excited. So you can remove the tie rod either with a hammer right here by banging on here, or if you're not gonna reuse this, you could possibly hit it on the top if you need to, but realize that it's not gonna be reusable at that point. Also, they make ball joint separators where you can put a little piece in here. It gets a lot of pressure and goes bang. So this is the point where you have to take off your little steering U-joint shaft thing. Right up here at the top, you can kind of push your steering rack and you can get it to where you can get to the bolt. So you're gonna remove one bolt up there and one bolt down here. When you just loosen up the nut on there, it's gonna allow it to loosen up off the shaft, and then you should be able to remove this. We're gonna do that next, and then we'll pull out the steering rack, and then I can make the appropriate upgrades to this. Oh yeah, guys, if you're going under the car, you might want some safety glasses. You can pick some of these things up. The night shades, the 1993s, look super 80s, 90s while working on your E30. Use code WRINCHON, I think you get like 10% off or something like that. Sick. Pit Viper! Okay, progress report. So I got the steering rack basically hanging halfway out of the car. I just bent down the tabs on the subframe. That's what you have to do unless you remove the whole subframe. I did not want to remove the whole subframe as I don't have any sort of engine support at the moment. So probably removing the subframe would actually be a little bit easier. If you want to do all this stuff at once and upgrade your subframe, from Garagistic, they do a nice rebuild, so you can pick that up and kind of put this all together and pretty much bolt it in, which would be cool. But I still got the lines connected because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get this off. This is from the steering column. This top part here, cleaner looking side, was from the steering column, and this goes actually down to the power steering rack. Now that I got the steering shaft out of the car, I'm going to install the CaTuned steering shaft flex coupler. This is a polyurethane coupler, which is going to replace this rubberized piece right here. It's going to be much harder and you're going to get a lot less play. It is going to be awesome. Also, I'm going to be installing these little spacers right here for the steering coupler. What's going to go on is we're going to get this little pin out of here. We got to drill this out. This is going to go in its place and basically space this portion out. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a unibit and drill this out from the top. Pretty good. Boom. What I did really quick to get these out of here is basically just separated it into two pieces by cutting it with a Sawzall. All right, now I just gotta pound out this little spot right here real quick. So I went ahead and kind of bored this out a little bit. That way I could get this to insert into the shaft. Once I did that, now I can take this with the other piece and I can intertwine it like that. And I'm gonna be able to put my bolt through. Even that's pretty small, so I'm gonna have to bore that out a little bit as well. So I'll bore that hole out a little bit and then we'll be able to bolt this up. All right, so that should be good now. Yep. After taking the Sawzall to these edges right here, I was able to chop the bolts off. This definitely takes a while to create this shaft. Set aside quite a bit of time to do this. If you can get a spare shaft and just like out of the junkyard and pre-make this, it would definitely save you a lot of time on the install because you're gonna have your car sitting out there for quite a while you do this. Now also what I probably wanna do is just clean up this area right here. I'm gonna just sort of round that out. That way we get a little bit better angle there, and I'm also gonna bore this out on the inside just a little bit because I've heard when you put it on you can get a bit of binding. I mean, you can feel that that's not the smoothest thing ever if it is at more of an angle. So I wanna take care of that before I throw it back in the car because I don't wanna take it out again. So once you drill these out and bore these out a bunch, I'm just using a basically a pry bar, a punch on one end. I got a BFH right here. I'll give this thing a couple good whacks. Boom, and I broke it right out of there. Now, all my bolts have been removed from the shaft. You can see I have open holes to where I can bolt in the new steering coupler. So we got the little new polyurethane bushing from CaTuned. Now we're gonna go ahead and just take this portion. We'll insert the piece, take these, gonna go ahead and slide them in. The bolts on the one side may be a bit tight So you may have to bore out these holes. I'm gonna see how this goes. Yeah, I'm gonna have to bore out the holes on this side of the shaft because it doesn't look like, yeah, it's not going through. So we're just gonna open those up a bit and then I'll be able to send it. All right guys, so I went ahead and kind of just opened this area up with the Dremel. That way I get more flex out of this and I get a really smooth transition. So you can see now I have like a lot of angle that I can get in there, and it's pretty smooth all the way around. So, and now it's not going to give me any sort of grinding if I'm at like a steeper steering angle, you know, due to this kind of wrapping up with the end with the U-joints. So now I'm going to do the same thing to this one, where I'm just going to kind of clean this up and just sort of round it off. I just want to make sure that I don't have any binding here. This other shaft, now you can see I have like a lot of play in this one too, so I can get a lot of angle going on. Alright, so the new polyurethane flex joint is installed. As you can see, all the bolts are all in, and it basically looks like this. So with the Garagistic bushings, you just kind of put these little metal pieces in here. Those go, both of those. And then you're going to mount this like this, which we're going to have to mount it in one certain direction. And then the washer and all that, and I'm gonna do that off camera because that's gonna be hard to hold in frame and do. All right guys, so this steering shaft is completely done now. As you can see, it is super solid. I mean, there is absolutely no play in this at all. So there is no slop, no little jiggle. It is just straight nice. And we got all of this articulation in it, so we should be good now. That's how you put on the Garagistic little spacers here. You'll use these on the steering rack, and this is the CaTuned steering rag coupler, and this is made of polyurethane, so this thing is sweet. So go ahead and subscribe if you guys have not, and like the video, and we'll talk to you soon. Later, and wrench on.